Hello, everybody. Oh, nice and loud. Maybe we can do something about that. So, welcome. I'm Rauli, author of the study that we are publishing today in this small seminar. And I want to welcome you all. And I will give it to our lovely hostess, Taina. And she will take care of us for the rest of the evening.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. And welcome to the publication seminar of Shipyard Nuclear in Finland study. So I'm Taina Törmänen, Communications Assistant for Replanet and also for Ecomodernist Society of Finland. Yeah, I'm honored to host this spectacular event tonight. And we are extremely privileged to have many inspirational speakers with us. So you might want to prepare some questions that you can ask later on. So let's begin. First, why Shipyard Nuclear? Please welcome our first speaker, Kirsty Gogan.
That's me. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much, Diana. Thanks, Rauli, for organizing us and convening everyone. And yeah, delighted to be here. My name is Kirsty Gogan. I'm co-founder of LucidCatalyst, which is a consulting firm, with Eric Ingersoll as my co-founder. He's here and will be speaking as well this afternoon. And it's really my honor to sort of open this session on shipyard manufactured nuclear. And as you will learn today, we really think that this has tremendous potential for two reasons. Firstly, for really transforming the delivery and deployment of nuclear technologies in terms of the cost and rates of deployment that we could achieve. And secondly, for the application of nuclear technologies for power generation, but also for other really important non-power applications that will be really critical to our decarbonization. So I'll be sharing with you some findings from a report that we published in September 2020 called Missing Link to a Livable Climate, how hydrogen-enabled synthetic fuels can help to deliver our Paris goals. Now, I apologize for the busyness of this slide. I guess some of you will be familiar with this chart. So it's from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC report, which shows the very dramatic, very steep reduction in carbon emissions that we need to achieve within an incredibly short timescale. Eric has said previously that, you know, I like to ski, but I wouldn't want to ski down that slope because it's extremely steep. And you can see here in the bullet points the kinds of activities that we need to achieve in order to really get down that curve. We need to repower all of our coal plants globally. There's 2 terawatts of coal currently generating throughout the world, contributing almost a third of our total global carbon emissions. We have to convert all the liquid fuels to carbon neutral alternatives, replace natural gas, enable massive increases in energy access, maybe even doubling or tripling our global energy infrastructure to meet rising global energy demand. And we have to do all of that really, really fast. In fact, you may have noticed in my opening slide here, oh, no, it's down, it's really down at the bottom there, but on the front of our report, when we published it in September 2020, rather than saying, you know, September 2020, we said 28 years to 2050, which is, you know, that's the timescale we're operating in here. My daughter will be the age that I am now then. It's really not very far away. So here's our current trajectory. This is from the IEA, but frankly, it could be from any of the mainstream energy systems modeling organizations that are all fairly consistent in concluding that the vast majority of our energy will still come from fossil fuels by 2050. You can see that kind of little ring there showing that even despite quite an impressive growth in renewables in light blue, we're still forecast to get most of our energy from fossil fuels, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But it's really important just to say that what we're actually looking at here is a 3 to 4 degree warming trajectory. Okay, that's what this actually means, and that is a really bad outcome. for my kids and your kids and all our kids. So we have a sort of a little kind of analogy that we like to use when we are thinking about the solutions that we should be developing to address these problems, which, you know, is this is a picture of an Impossible Burger. For those of you that don't know, it's a plant-based meat substitute that looks like a burger, tastes like a burger, costs the same as a burger, and you can buy it through the existing supply chains. So it doesn't require any behavior change. It's a kind of a drop-in substitute. It's very accessible and available. And that's really what we need a lot of our climate solutions to be like, and particularly fuels, because what we can't do is assume that everybody is going to change their behavior and stop flying and stop using their cars and make all of those transitions to sustainable travel. And we can't assume that people are going to be willing to pay more. And we can't assume that we'll be able to electrify absolutely everything within the timescales we need and make all of the investments and sequence those investments in all of the associated infrastructure to enable that transition within the timescales that we need. So ideally, we need drop-in substitute fuels that look like a burger, taste like a burger, and cost the same as a burger for our fuels, for example. So to make these solutions really drop-in substitutes, they're going to have to be very cheap to match the costs that we're used to paying today for fossil fuels. They're going to have to be really scalable, so available at the scale of the current market that they're addressing, and then, of course, rapidly deployable. So let's look at fuels in more detail. So if we're going to scale synthetic fuels production, let's see the size of the market that we're addressing, which is currently about 100 million barrels per day. And that fossil fuel, liquid fuels that we use are, as we all know, relatively cheap. I mean, they're getting more expensive at the moment. But so this chart, I'll just explain. So along the horizontal bands here, we have the sort of historical average oil prices, and you can see oil prices there around $100 a barrel at the high end. And then obviously the lower prices in the second half of that horizontal band. And because hydrogen is the key ingredient in clean synthetic fuels, whether you're making ammonia, which can be used as a drop-in substitute for diesel or gas, or you're making synthetic hydrocarbons, which can be used in existing airplanes, for example, it's really the hydrogen that is the main cost driver, determining the cost of those synthetic fuels. So this chart shows the guardrails for the hydrogen production cost. So the hydrogen, in order to make ammonia, for example, that would be within the range of traditional oil prices, the hydrogen would need to cost less than $1.50 a kilogram. Oh, it looks like with these, maybe Eric, if you wouldn't mind moving over to the side, because the chart is going very low. Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. And if you wanted to make synthetic hydrocarbons, your hydrogen would need to cost around $1 a kilogram. So that gives us a sense of what we're targeting in order to make these synthetic fuels competitive with the oil and gas that we're using today. Now, the oil and gas industry is already operating at a global scale, already supplies cost-competitive energy. It has the capital, the supply chains, the business models to develop the technologies, the projects, produce the products, and then distribute them to end users. Now, this capability enables the development of new products, leveraging cost reduction from really high productivity manufacturing to deliver drop-in fuels. So let's see how we can really leverage that existing capability within the global oil and gas facilities industry. So we have two sort of theories. Firstly, to make nuclear deployment very cheap. Firstly, bring the project to the factory, and the second, bring the factory to the project. Now, in this case, we're bringing the factory to the project, and the factory is actually these boxes here at the back of this. This is a hydrogen gigafactory, which is a fully integrated manufacturing, installation, and production facility. You can see the advanced heat sources are being made here in the grey shed at the back, and then installed into the reactor farm here in the middle of the picture, and then producing hydrogen using electrolysis equipment and synthetic fuels in the foreground. And you can see there's some pipes here. It's a little low res, it looks like, but There's some pipes down here in the bottom left, which is showing the hydrogen being delivered directly into the gas networks. But it's also a coastal brownfield refinery site. It's sized to be around about the size of a medium-sized refinery. It's about 20 gigawatts installed. It's a completely different business model to the one that we're used to seeing in the nuclear industry, where you've got SMR developers seeking to move into a manufacturing-based approach. But the problem they have is that they don't have any customers that are making the orders, sufficiently to be able to invest in the manufacturing capability. So they're essentially moving the kind of capital investment from a traditional construction-based project into a manufacturing product-based environment, but then you move your capital investment into the manufacturing facility. If you're building a facility like this, which has 20 gigawatts installed, but then you can continue to export those reactors once you've filled up your own refinery-based facility, you can really invest a lot in your manufacturing facility, and that will deliver very low costs. This facility would deliver hydrogen for less than $1 a kilogram, so we're hitting that cost target. And about 10 of these would entirely replace the UK's current oil and gas consumption. So this is a very small, although it's quite a large facility, it's a very small footprint for the kind of scale of production that's needed. And then we have the other way of doing it, which is where you bring your project to the factory. And in this case, the factory is a high productivity manufacturing environment, a world-class shipyard, which of course we'll be hearing more about today. And the entire process of creating this floating platform is really designed for the very highly efficient and automated shipyard production environment, which enables certainty and rapid learning and well-understood financing models and very scalable production. And I won't dwell here because we'll be hearing more about these facilities in the subsequent talks, but this is a rendering, as a little preview, a rendering of an ammonia bunker offloading ammonia from a production platform, the Finnish FPSO, which is the large green ship. And in this scenario, the ammonia is used for fueling ships. We think it would take about 325 of these platforms to fully decarbonize today's global shipping industry. And that obviously we expect will increase, as the shipping industry is absolutely critical for keeping the global economy moving. And then finally, here we have an FPSO for hydrogen power, ammonia, and desalination. This is a sort of energy for humanity ship, or a multi-product platform, which we'd envisage as being moored off the coast of a developing economy, for example. And I love this one because it means really that you don't have to then build, a large number of terrestrial infrastructure projects, which would be difficult to finance, which would be potentially difficult to bring the supply chain capability to deliver those infrastructure projects. And then, ultimately, it's a very challenging environment to ultimately build infrastructure projects in developing economies. Whereas if you have a floating facility, then you can pipe the power in, you can bring the fuels in, and you can desalinate enough water for the entire city of Accra using this platform. It's really kind of an astonishing production capability. And you can scale them. You can scale up to fleet levels. Here we see several of these facilities docked in a single facility. And 7 of the ammonia FPSOs docked here in a fleet facility, each producing about 1.2 million tons per year of the world's lowest cost zero carbon ammonia, would be the equivalent of about 5% of total global ammonia production. So, incredible scale. So remember, we at the beginning we talked about cost and speed and scale and space. We'll just focus for a moment here on cost. Now, we all know that first of a kind, first in a generation, first in country projects can be, quite expensive. Here we see a folk kind of represented from a kind of experience recently in Europe or in the United States, around $12,000 a kilogram. Previous work by our firm, LucidCatalyst, has shown that actually it's possible after the investment initially in enabling skills and capability within the supply chain, the regulator, the project leadership team, and the workforce, it's possible to achieve a very radical cost reduction once you've licensed a design, built it, and then if you build it again, there's many, many costs that you don't have to spend twice. So your second of a kind can achieve a dramatic cost reduction. Here we can see that actually the global average cost of nuclear new build around the world today is less than $4,000 a kilogram. But less than $4,000 a kilowatt. But then if you move even into the sort of manufacturing-based environment, away from the traditional construction environment, building a light water reactor in a shipyard, our estimates are less than $2,000. And then as you move into sort of more advanced capability in the shipyard environment and ultimately mass production, we will be demonstrating today how actually very low costs are achievable. Now, this is a chart that I do encourage you to look at in the report. I think it's featured in Rowley's new report, which shows the hydrogen production costs from a range of clean sources. The key thing here to note is that capacity factor is a key driver of hydrogen production costs. So even if you have a more expensive energy technology, operating at a higher capacity factor, you will achieve quite a low production cost for hydrogen. The blue shaded bottom of the graph there shows the cost of hydrogen required if you want to be within the band of historic oil prices. Again, absolutely critical to achieve the scale of the transition that's needed. And in this chart, we can see the potential effect of the low-cost drop in substitutes. So if we were to scale the production of these kinds of synthetic hydrocarbons and synthetic fuels at the rate of deployment that we think is achievable, then we could actually achieve the transition within the timescales we looked at right at the front of this presentation. So how much will it all cost? Well, here's our production of the cumulative investment required to achieve this full fuel substitution of the 350 exajoules that are identified as being consumed by 2050 by the IEA. So the red bar shows the $24 trillion that the oil and gas industry are planning to invest to maintain the flow of oil and gas until 2050. And the green bar would be the required investment if you were to produce all of those hydrogen-based fuels just using renewables. Assuming this is a 2040 cost for renewables from the National Renewable Energy Lab, and that's just over $70 trillion. And then the blue bar is the total investment if this fuel demand is met through these FPSOs and gigafactories that we described earlier. So the required investment is less than continuing to produce oil and gas in the traditional way. In fact, my 9-year-old son at the time said, "Wait, so you mean it would be cheaper to save the world than to destroy it?" Just kind of, yeah, good outcome, good insight there. So it looks like it could be feasible from a cost perspective and a deployment rate perspective using these large industries that already operate at scale. Let's just see what the kind of capacity is within the global shipyard fleet. So here's the projected production rate that would be required for meeting this entire demand with FPSOs manufactured in shipyards. The annual production rate's on the left, and the cumulative fleet is on the right there. So to replace global oil and gas, ladies and gentlemen, 100 million barrels of oil per day, we need about 14,000 of those platforms. So that's a pretty big market, right? And then in the last 5 years, there's actually been a consolidation of global shipyard capacity. A lot of smaller, less efficient shipyards have closed down, but there's still around 281 active shipyards in the world. And as we can see in this chart, the full substitution of the oil and gas industry by clean synthetic fuels could actually be accomplished from the dedicated production of just 64 of those 281 global shipyards. Now, obviously, as this industry takes hold and grows, we'd expect really a substantial investment in those global shipyards as well. But even with the existing capacity, we could be churning these things out and producing fuels. Finally, let's look at can you see the maps okay? Can you tell? No, I'm sorry, it's not very clear. This is all you can see really are the outlines of the pink outline shows you the size of the wind farm that would be required to entirely replace the UK oil and gas consumption today with yeah, I'll just leave this, and you can look at these maps online. So this just shows the, ExxonMobil, Shell. This is the global, a few global oil companies you may have heard of, and their current production of oil: 4 million barrels per day for Exxon, Shell 3,700,000 barrels per day of production of the 100 million total that we use, and then the number of platforms that we're expecting them to need to buy to replace their current oil production with clean synthetic fuels. And I guess the final message I would leave you with is that, if we can repower 2 terawatts of coal with advanced nuclear energy, which is another thing we're working on, and deliver refinery-scale hydrogen and substitute the 100 million barrels per day with these global FPSOs, then what do we have? We have the new primary energy. So I will stop there and hand you back to our host, to Rauli Partanen, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much.